Welcome to another episode of Soothe Your Soul. We are so excited to be back. I know it's been a minute. I feel like we haven't recorded for like a week.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So we're back today. We hope everybody's been enjoying themselves. We just put up our other video on our YouTube for the vision board. So we're really excited. That video's up. Go check it out. It's super cool. Today we have another very interesting topic for you. It's my phrase that I love to say. Our topic today is how to create a more meaningful life. And I want to just pause here for 1 second because I seem to be hearing that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's just become like a catchphrase now of everybody saying, create a more meaningful life.
Right.
But when I think of it, to me, it feels so loaded and so heavy and so daunting.
Mm-hmm. A lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure.
Because it's like you have to get this right. You only have one life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like when I hear that, it's like, okay, but where's the manual?
Yeah.
How do I create this more meaningful life for myself that everyone seems to be throwing around and that's easy to create?
Right.
So maybe let's talk about that a little bit more and get some clarity for everybody so we maybe have a little bit more of a direction in how we can create a more meaningful life for ourselves. As I was jotting some notes down, and one of the things that came to me is, do we even know who we are?
Yeah. I think that's the first thing you have to really think about is, who am I in the sense of what's important to me?
Yeah.
What will make me happy?
Mm-hmm. And that's a very broad concept too.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we're going to narrow it down, but it all begins with, if we don't know who we are, then how can we begin to understand what's meaningful for us? So, and I want to just put that question out there because I want you guys to ask yourself, do I know who I am? Do I know what I like? Do I know my interests? Do I know my beliefs, my values? And you might, but there are so many other things that, whether they're day-to-day tasks or things that we have to make decisions on.
Yeah.
Do we know who we are?
Mm-hmm.
Do we know what we like?
Yeah, and I think also just having, getting stuck in the daily routine. You don't really take much time to consider, who am I? Why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes I just have to do a certain task to get by, but what meaning does it have for me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And as I was thinking about why it is so hard to create meaning, I thought about a few things. So I made a list of a few things, what may be preventing us from feeling like we have a more meaningful life.
Mm-hmm.
And I also thought about what's changed maybe since, I don't know, back when things felt simpler.
Yeah.
I can say that now, but it just feels like things are going so fast now. And with technology, and I just see my kids and how they bounce from one technology device to the next and their world is constantly moving.
Yeah.
I sometimes feel like they don't take time. So maybe we're all not taking time out to really think about what we want, what we love, what is more meaningful for us.
Right. I agree with you. I think it's important for us to just reflect for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we'll touch on this soon, but a lot of it is, creating stillness, some calmness, to be able to understand who you really are and what this means to you.
Absolutely. And again, it's such a big concept. And I want us to think about ways we can break it down, because we don't have to create meaning for our entire life right this minute. If we start with small things, and that's just how I want us to think about it as we talk. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was, the I put down on here, the fast food analogy. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes I have this conversation with people and I say, so many, times I've seen my mom even, she'll make things from scratch. Like everything is made from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And she put so much love and time and effort into everything she makes. It's very meaningful for her
Yeah.
to host dinners, to have people over, and she puts so much meaning into it that she has so much fulfillment when people come over and she can host.
Yeah.
So I feel like, a lot of times though, with our busy lives, getting things fast has become easier.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's easier, I'm not sure how much meaning there is behind it. Not that everything has to have meaning, some things have to be fast.
Yeah.
But maybe taking time out, at least once a week maybe,
Mm-hmm.
to create a meal or do something that's more time consuming and meaningful.
I agree, and that's just like, it touches on like hobbies, certain little
Yes.
hobbies that you like to do. A lot of, for me at least personally, to create a meaningful life is do more that sparks the creativity in you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's making a new meal,
Mm-hmm.
painting, drawing, some sort of arts and craft, it really, whatever that means to you. But I think it really puts you to be in the moment
Yeah.
and creates the stillness that we all need.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, we have to create it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna walk to me.
If only it was that easy.
I have to create it. We have to create it for ourselves. And it is hard, but I also want to remind us that it's kind of like exercise. When
Yeah.
it's hard to start exercising and that routine, but once we do it a couple of times, it starts to feel rewarding.
Definitely.
And that reward that you walk away with feels, it's like a reinforcement that you want to go do it again.
Yeah.
Because it feels good, you feel so much better for the rest of the day or even week. So you want to go do it again. And that's the kind of reward and reinforcement I want to create with meaningfulness.
I agree, and I think with creating, there's some form of vulnerability in there.
Yes.
I think it really forces us to sit and evaluate ourselves and even think about what's preventing me from doing XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of it can be centered around either shame, guilt, anxiety, and sometimes it's just easier to stay in the safe zone, the comfort zone, I should say.
Absolutely.
But just because it's easy doesn't mean that it's creating a life that is fulfilling for you.
Mm-hmm. And I think we'll get into that also. I want to talk a little bit more about that in detail. A few things that you were talking about earlier with, Brene Brown's work. And
Yes.
so we'll get into that because that's, I think, very important. And, really quickly, can we create meaning with mundane tasks? Everyday tasks like doing dishes, laundry.
Yeah,
We were just talking about that.
Yes.
Those are everyday tasks, and maybe not to the point of like, this is my favorite job and I love it so much.
Mm-hmm.
But can we create a little bit more meaning in it so that it doesn't feel so heavy
Yeah.
and taxing every day? Because those are things that help us, stay organized. And for me, that's the meaning behind it. For me is, it helps me stay organized. An organization for me is self-care.
Yeah.
I like seeing things clean.
Yeah.
And it makes me happier. So I feel like in a way for me, I'm taking care of me and my family. So it's meaningful for me.
Right.
So I just wanted to add that in there because I know it has come up with my clients a couple of times where the day-to-day tasks can start feeling heavy. So I think this will be a good fit for applying some of this into some of those mundane tasks and to create meaning in them.
I definitely think so too, and I think it's also important just to have something to reward yourself with.
Yeah.
Because, even doing those tasks, like doing laundry, is something that I especially dread. But after I either watch a show or I'll put on a podcast and do my laundry. So it doesn't feel so dreadful or it doesn't feel as heavy, and it makes it a little bit more enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that idea. One thing we touched on was beliefs and values. Do we know what our beliefs and values are? And that can help us create more meaning in our life because we are grounded in some beliefs and values.
Yeah.
So again, it's a big concept and we don't have to know immediately what our beliefs and values are, but just something to think about. And when we start thinking about it, I think it starts to crystallize a little bit more and become more clear for us.
Definitely. I think so too, and I feel like with the beliefs and values, you kind of create a sense of identity
Yeah.
and get more in tune with who you are
Mhm.
and what's important to you. So knowing yourself in greater depths.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the baseline. I mean, that's the whole message behind all of this, getting to know yourself
Yeah.
in greater depth. I love that. You just kind of nailed it right there when you said that. That is the message we want to send. We're done.
Yeah, end the video.
And it's so important because if we don't know who we are,
Yeah,
how can we say these are the things we like or don't like?
right. I
So.
agree. There's layers.
Layers. And we're now getting into some of the other deeper ones that you had talked about earlier.
Right. I know a lot of it was meaningful relationships. Taking, a look around and examining what kind of relationships am I centering myself around. And I think I even touched on this in my dream board and like creating this year to be a year filled of me, myself, practicing the love that I want to receive. So practicing giving that love and hoping that that's the love that I would receive. And with that, I also had to take into account, are the people that I have in my life capable of doing that for me?
That's a really good question.
And there's no shame on them or any, bad talk, but a lot of it is sometimes they may not have the bandwidth to do it, and that's okay. But I know for myself and what will make me happy, there's certain love acts that really do bring me fulfillment and make me feel appreciated. And I think with creating a meaningful life is knowing that I appreciate the people in my life and they appreciate me, and creating this symbiotic relationship.
Yeah. I love that. I really love when you said, they may not be able to give that to you or meet you where you're at, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we walk away from that being okay without feeling resentful or, upset that these people that you're giving to, or,
Right.
That's where you're at. That's maybe not where they're at.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I think walking away has its whole other chapter. Because
It does.
I think you really have to value yourself. And by asking someone else to value you, you're not really following that. You're not putting yourself first. And I had to do a lot of that self-reflection
Mhm.
within myself. And with that came a lot of self-love.
Mhm.
Because in areas that they couldn't fulfill me in, I had to do that.
Mhm.
And that goes with creating a more meaningful life in a sense.
Absolutely. There are so many authors, and Brene Brown comes to mind
Yes,
a lot.
love her.
Love all of her work. If you haven't checked her out, guys, check out Brene Brown's work. She's written a lot of books. One of the things, excuse me, I really love about her work is she's a shame researcher, and she really talks about, the language we use for ourselves and how we talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's another piece that goes into meaningfulness, I think, is when something doesn't go our way, what are we saying to ourselves? Are we beating ourselves up?
Mm-hmm.
Or when something bad happens, are we shaming ourselves? That is the language that probably sticks with us more, preventing us from being the best version of ourselves. Because we feel like sometimes it's cultural and sometimes it's it's what's been modeled to us.
Mm-hmm.
Children are shamed when they make a mistake, and that's the voice maybe we take away with us and grow up as adults and start shaming ourselves because that's what we were taught.
Yeah.
But to create a more meaningful life for ourselves, I feel like there is a big piece of that self-love.
Yeah. I agree. And even when you start to engage in negative self-talk or being very critical of yourself, just stop one thought and try to reframe that. That's my biggest piece of advice. Because although you can't stop them all, just start with one.
Yeah.
and really sit with how you reframed it and how you converted it and translated it into something positive that created that sense of self-love. You may not believe it, but if you continue to do it, it becomes a habit.
Yes.
And then you kind of ingrain that in yourself.
Yeah, it's muscle memory.
Yeah.
And those are the habits that we're trying to say were created. Maybe the shaming, all of those negative self-talk or habits maybe that got created. However, over years, maybe 20 years, maybe 15 years. But to undo that, it might take a little bit of time and muscle memory. So in order to create muscle memory, there's rehearsal. We have to practice positive self-talk. We have to continue to practice some of those behaviors. It's like that paper folding exercise.
That's what came to mind for me.
It's in our video, guys. Check out one of our videos on the paper folding exercise. So this goes right in with the gratitude, practicing gratitude.
Yes. And Brene Brown touched on this just in the best way. And she focused a lot on one reason why we tend to take away from joyful moments that we experience is because we're not grateful for them.
Yeah.
We tend to just think, we're never going to feel this joy again, so let that be that. And it kind of kills it. It kills the happiness in the moment because you're not being grateful for it. You're already thinking about how you won't be able to create this again. So why don't we just practice gratitude and be thankful and be grateful for the moments that we do have, and maybe in that sense we can learn to replicate it again.
It's reminding me very much of the gratitude helps us remember. It kind of marks in our memory the happy moments in our lives more. Because as human beings, we tend to remember more traumatic, negative events that have happened because we're evolutionary. We evolve. We want to problem solve. So as we evolve, we problem solve, we remember the things that we need to fix, hence the bad things that have happened in our lives.
Right.
But we're really not taking away some of the good moments and not marking them enough, maybe. So by holding a little space like gratitude, holding them a little bit longer, those joyful moments, maybe we can create more of like a defined memory for ourselves so that we're not just skipping over it. Like, this moment was fine. Like, it was great. Let's just move on. But we're holding it a little bit longer.
Yeah. And also, by just kind of like pushing it to the side, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because the moments that you are down bad and you are very stressed out, that's all you can think about. And it almost feels like that's what your path consists of.
Yeah.
Because you don't have those joyful moments to really sit with and reflect on and even, reminisce a little bit so it can bring a little bit light to the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Yeah. We got to balance that.
Yeah.
So if we're going to be, hard on ourselves, or remember naturally as human beings, we're going to walk away with some of the things that didn't go well, why not create a little bit more space and memory for the things that have gone well in our lives? There's a rule in my house, and I need to implement it a little bit better. For every one negative comment or, thing we say to ourselves, whether it's in passing, like, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid, I should have done this differently, and it can slip out of anybody's mouth, and any one of us can just kind of be hard on ourselves.
Right.
The rule is to say 5 positive things to counteract the 1 negative. Because of how our brains register that negative self-talk. And it's like a weighing scale. For every 1 negative, it takes 5 or 6 positive to counteract that 1 negative comment that you hear or you say to yourself. So we need a lot more positive to counteract the 1 negative. So once we do that, whether it's, my son says it and I say, okay, well, you said 1 negative, either you say 5 positive or I will tell you 5 positive things about you. And what I want them to walk away with is the lens with which they view themselves. I want them to have a more realistic, positive lens
Yeah.
with which they view themselves. Not, oh, I'm so stupid because I forgot something. That's not true.
No. And I think that's really beautiful that you're creating that and cultivating that into your home space, because kids remember what they were shown.
Mm-hmm.
And they carry that and they bring it into their adult life, as we know.
Yes.
And how important is it to teach them at a young age?
Voice of self-love.
Mm-hmm. And creating that resiliency too.
Yes. I can forgive myself. I can move on. And you know, I think that allows us, and the reason I'm thinking, I'm trying to loop it back in here with the creating one meaning in our life, meaningful life, is those things that create that negativity fill up our cup, not leaving enough space for us to have or create more meaning with meaningful things, or create time for meaning.
Right.
In how we see ourselves, maybe someone would say, I'm not important enough to do this for myself, or I'm not worthy of blah 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 love, or you know, I've heard so many different versions of this, but it all comes from, you know, self-love, how we talk to ourselves. Are we creating that space for a more meaningful life?
Definitely. Ah, I love this.
I know, and there's so much more to talk about. This is just the beginning of, you know, some of this. So hopefully what you have taken away from this is just a few things to think about, you know, the things that might be causing roadblocks and creating a more meaningful life for yourself. Can you create a little bit more time to get to know yourself, or the things you love, the things you value?
Right.
Think about your relationships. This is just a time for you to think about some of the things we've talked about, and I know we'll probably touch base on this topic again.
Right. It comes in layers.
It does.
Yes. And I think it's also just very important, again, as we always say, to give yourself grace.
Yeah.
Because a meaningful life has so much weight to it.
Yeah.
And like we said in the beginning, there's a lot of pressure. And it
Yeah.
seems daunting. But there's never a right way. It's just
Mhm.
what feels right to you.
Mm-hmm. And break the steps down.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be daunting. It can just be a concept right now. What does creating a meaningful life look like? And we're asking you to just think about some of these things.
Yeah.
And break that picture down into smaller parts and accomplishable goals. So that's it.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Right.
Definitely a big concept. But we hope you've enjoyed this. We're going to be back talking about this. This isn't over.
Yeah. There might be a couple series.
Yeah. Thanks for joining today.